Hi, thanks so much for joining in. This is a special broadcast to you from NDTV Profit. It's called Spot the Scam. Let me lay the context for you. Over the last decade, and particularly after the COVID-19 pandemic, you've had millions of investors in India come to the fore, invest in the capital markets and build wealth. Now, there are forces in the stock markets that everybody is familiar with. Greed and fear. These are what determine prices. But they are also what a lot of scamsters prey on. They promise you amazing returns on products that you might not have heard of, that you're not familiar with, and a lot of times you have investors that fall victim to these scamsters. One such nationwide scam came to light because of efforts by NDTV Profit's very own Charu, and we're bringing her on to tell you about some of them, but this has to do with Dabba trading. If you've not heard about it, we'll tell you what it means, but this is an unregulated space, it is illegal, and a lot of people have lost money. Are you one of those people? If so, you can get in touch with us on the numbers that will soon flash on your screen, and you can ask us questions. We are going to have experts explain what recourse you might have, if at all. In fact, let's go across to Charu first to talk about what this is about and why even the Securities and Exchange Board of India has taken cognizance of what we have reported. Charu?
So the market regulator, Securities and Exchange Board of India, came out with a very interesting press release yesterday listing its actions against the Dabba trading firm that gave a newspaper ad in a Hindi daily. So listing its directions, we have come to know that SEBI has registered a police complaint, a cyber police complaint with the cyber police. Apart from that, they have also sent a notice to the Hindi daily called Navbharat against the ad that they have run on their front page, and the advertisement authority of the country has also taken the cognizance of the entire issue. Now, coming on the modus operandi or how this was, going ahead, we have come to know that investors were duped of large amounts of money. They were given promises of exaggerated returns and no brokerage fees. However, whenever they booked profits, their accounts were banned or they were only allowed to withdraw partial amounts from them. Now, this is something that was running from Nagpur, Delhi, and eventually even had some links to UAE. And we must understand that this was running as a very formal setup, even though it was completely illegal in its very nature, because people were employed by the entity, over 20 or more people, on the pretext of, giving them a formal job. However, that was not the case. We also have a conversation with this person who was running the operation, who called himself Raghav, and we can, help our viewers listen to that conversation right here.
और आपको तो जन्म भी नहीं होता तब से डब्बा ट्रेडिंग का काम हो रहा है। अभी अभी तो ये NSE, BSE, आप देख पहले क्या होता था, पेपर पे लिखा जाता था, आधा पत्ते पे चढ़ता था, आधा नहीं चढ़ता था। धंधा थोड़ी ना बंद हो गया, धंधा तो पहले से ही चल रहा है।
सही बात है।
एप्लीकेशन का काम ये जो चल रहा है, ये 15-16 साल से चल रहा है। मैं और आप तो डिसाइड नहीं कर सकते ना किसी के बोलने से। मेटा 5 एप्लीकेशन है, पूरे इंडिया में चल रही है मैडम, इंडिया के पूरे वर्ल्ड में चल रही है।
सही बात है राघव जी।
हाँ,
कहाँ से हैं आप?
कौन से मीडिया में डालना है ये तो बताइए।
NDTV। कहाँ से हैं आप?
हम तो हिंदुस्तान से ही है, बेस्ड ऑफ दिल्ली है।
दिल्ली से?
हाँ जी मैडम।
दिल्ली में कहाँ से?
दिल्ली में रहते हैं मैडम हम। वो देखा आपने शाहदरा?
राघव जी, आपको डर बिल्कुल नहीं लग रहा कि ऐसे न्यूज़ चली जाएगी, लिख जाएगा, छप जाएगा, ये आपको बिल्कुल उसका ऐसे हल्का सा भी खौफ नहीं है?
मैडम एक बात में खौफ किस लिए रखना चाहिए तो बताओ, कौन सा गलत काम कर रहा हूँ मैं?
कौन सा गलत काम कर रहा हूँ मैं? This is the statement of somebody who is absolutely unafraid. Exactly what Charu was asking. But Charu, a lot of people are unfamiliar with what Dabba trading is. Why is it illegal? And why is it something like a market that is running parallel to the official market, which is, of course, run by the stock exchanges? Can you explain this?
Yeah, so Dabba trading, first of all, is a completely illegal mechanism of conducting trades, and it is completely unregulated also. So what happens is that same transfer of securities that happens in the regulated market is also happening here, but it is not taking place on any recognized stock exchanges, which means that Dabba trading operator, a person who's running this scheme, is going to settle your trades on their own platform. This platform is not registered, this platform is not legal or even, something legible. It is just something that they have made up and lured investors on the basis of exaggerated claims. Now, we must also understand that if the investors are duped of any amount of money, they cannot go ahead and complain about it. None of their grievances will be heard by the regulators. So getting the money back or making a complaint about it is also something that becomes very difficult. Now, also coming on to how in current times these things are being conducted. Firstly, you also get SMSs about it. Then you get stock tips on Telegram channels. The Telegram channels are also something where they sort of, get more people to gather and get lured into their schemes. Then there are WhatsApp demo calls conducted where people are, talked into their schemes, and some explainers and stock tips are also given through YouTube explainers. And some of these entities also have their own Play Store apps which you can download and operate on. So that's how it is being conducted.
Thanks so much, Charu. And that lays the foundation for this conversation. And just let me repeat, there are a couple of numbers that will be flashing on your screen. You can call us if you have experienced something like this, if you've lost money in particular and you'd like to speak to our guests, our experts. You can even message us. We'll play that number on the screen as well. But, it's on the bottom of the screen. Sandeep Parekh, Managing Partner at Finsec Law Advisors, joining us right now. Shriram Subramanian, Managing Director and Founder of InGovern, joining us as well. Thank you so much to the both of you for taking this time and speaking about what I think is a very important issue. Sandeep, can you explain to my viewers why this is an illegal activity? And I don't know if you caught a slice of the conversation that we played out for you, the conversation with the supposed Raghav individual that we find out apparently is not his actual name. And he's going by something else. And by the way, it was a number from Saudi Arabia that he was using. So there were a lot of iffy things that were going on over there. And I'm glad that we've done this. The regulator has taken note of it. But why is this illegal?
I was lucky enough to hear the conversation. So I think in 1956, the Securities Contract Regulation Act was passed. And I think the Parliament decided in its wisdom that any off-exchange trade would be designated as not legitimate. And that we've had that consistent position for nearly 75 years now. The idea is that once you have a trading platform, which is NSE, BSE, MCX, which are very, very intrusively regulated. I think you want to ensure that investors get their money or the securities usually within one day. There's complete safety of the securities and the money. And the idea is to not allow things outside of the safe realm for trading. And I think we've done a good job if you look at how the markets have performed, how the efficiency, the T+1 system is probably the first in the entire world where people, get securities money the next day. I think we've done a fabulous job on the market, and I think it's smart that we've not allowed off exchange trades which are unregulated, which are of course full of sharks, where cheating would be kind of a very common practice because there's nobody to really oversee.
Shriram, I want you to come in on this because it seems that this underbelly, if you can call it that, has a lot of people that prey on those that are not really familiar with the rules and regulations as they stand, is alive and thriving, and there are people that are completely unafraid. Why do you think that is? Is it because of the lure of fast returns, or is there more to it?
Two things. One is obviously greed, in that sense of high returns. Somebody referring, usually it is somebody referring a friend, referring you, or you see your neighbors talking about high returns that they have earned in these Dabba trades. So from that perspective, you also then start trading in these Dabba trades. These are all paper profits that are initially shown similar to a Ponzi scheme. And there are small amounts of profits which are transferred to the accounts of the investor, so to say, or the trader. And then subsequently, overnight, the app is closed. And these days, of course, they are using the technology a lot, the operators, by having Telegram channels, as she pointed out, and other apps. where you deposit bank money, bank funding, and then subsequently you find that you cannot withdraw the funds. They just show high returns, but there is no way you can take back the funds for your into your bank account. So that is where I think one, counterparty risk is there. Two is all these returns are flaky returns. There is no guarantee that these returns will actually accrue to you. Three is the participants themselves are unregulated. So at any point of time, they are not registered. So they may run away. That is, the people perpetrating these Dabba trades, they may run away. Their offices may be very, one doesn't even know where these offices exist because they are using technology these days. They are remotely located, and they use, in fact, I've heard of situations where they use marquee names like BlackRock Securities, Invesco, HDFC, etc., etc. They are using these marquee names as, I would say, hooks to pull in newer and newer investors and sort of fool them into trading.
Fool them is the operative word. And so to that end, I will come back to you, Shriram, just to come up with a list of things to do, because you've named a lot of the things that are not followed by these individuals, by these scamsters. Among them, you've mentioned counterparty risk. I would like you to explain what that is as well. But Sandeep, before we get to that, to anybody tuning in, and this is a question that is coming from Alisha Singh, who's writing from Bengaluru, is there a complaint mechanism possible given that Dabba trading is not regulated by the market regulator SEBI? So if there is a scenario where you have fallen prey to this and you were not necessarily aware that this was illegal, is there a recourse that you have that is provided for by law? Sorry, I think you might just be on mute, Sandeep.
Yeah, sorry. No, so I don't think there's any kind of efficient remedy for these people, right? Because, and again, not to victim shame, but really most of the people who operate in this zone know that it is kind of either kind of dubious vintage, or they know that this is kind of absolute fraud. They're just kind of getting in because of the greed factor and maybe lower cost, etc. So I really don't think they have an efficient remedy. They can file a civil suit against these people or file a criminal case against these people who are hosting these kind of trades. But ultimately, SEBI will wash its hands off. What SEBI would typically do is, of course, they will try to shut down such a market. But, I think many of these markets are no longer physical, right? Earlier, you used to have these alternate markets outside of the main markets, somewhere near Dalal Street or somewhere near Ahmedabad Stock Exchange. I think that is all moved to the cyberspace, and therefore it's much harder for SEBI to catch and shut down these venues which are electronic in nature. So I think mainly it has to be kind of investor education, that there is no free money, and of course SEBI will do its job in terms of whack-a-mole. But in terms of getting money back, it would be pretty hard, because I think SEBI's
so then, okay. So, and point well made. Point well made. It's not the same as in an ordinary cyber fraud where the rules and the regulations provide you for a certain recourse. There's a golden window. There are numbers that you can call immediately that will allow for the funds that might have been siphoned off because of a phishing attack to get frozen, and that could come back to you in some form. But Sandeep, in this particular instance, what started it all was that newspaper advertisement, which was egregious. It was not really something that should have happened. So a viewer, Yash Tiwari, who's writing in from Banaras, is asking, how can the viewer understand, or how can the investor understand if a particular advertisement is for an illegal scheme if it is appearing in a newspaper? And that's a legitimate question to ask, is it not?
Yes, I think this is a particularly egregious example where, it came in mainstream media. But this is the first time I've seen it come in mainstream media. Normally, these are kind of, they happen through WhatsApp groups and stuff like that. So it's usually easy to spot that, you're not really trading through a SEBI registered broker. I think the key is everybody should watch out for is Are they registered with SEBI? The people you're dealing with, if they're registered advisors, registered brokers, registered portfolio managers, they will say it in all the communication, and they'll give their numbers, etc. If you're getting a call from UAE, like the gentleman, I mean that's pretty much the first red flag you should raise, thinking that there's something hanky panky happening.
Red flag, you named it. So therefore, let me ask you, Shriram, I'm circling back to you. First, you mentioned counterparty risk. In a normal trading scenario, or even the purchase of a share in the cash market, there is a counterparty risk that is taken by one of the entities that form part of the ecosystem. So can you explain why this is important and why this doesn't exist in this alternative market that has been created?
What is counterparty risk? Basically, it means that if I buy 100 shares of, say, Infosys, I mean, the party from whom I am buying delivers the shares to me. And there are mechanisms in the stock, in the NSE, BSE, and SEBI regulated stock markets to ensure that that doesn't happen. Even if the other party defaults, there's a cost imposed on them and the money is returned to you, and shares are auctioned, etc. There are mechanisms to ward off those counterparty risks. Even if I sell shares, there is a margin which is collected from the buyer, and so immediately you are assured that you would get the shares. So whereas in these illegal Dabba trading platforms, what happens is, one, you don't know whether actually if you buy 100 shares of Infosys, whether the person who is selling or whether the Dabba trader himself is just flashing on the screen or on the app that there is 100 shares of Infosys being sold to you. So from that perspective, you don't know whether the shares will be delivered. And if at all it is delivered, by when it will be delivered and how. And two is these are just fictitious, for all you know, even the money, as I told at the beginning, even if you make profits, they show a lot of profits. And at the time when you want to really withdraw the amount that you invested plus the profits, you would notice that you are unable to transfer those funds which the platforms show onto your bank account. So these are two counterparty. One is the securities default and two is the cash default, which is what these Dabba trading operators will play on.
I do want to ask, so Sandeep, you mentioned the red flags. And so therefore, what I want to ask is, from the perspective of an investor or trader, there are a few check boxes to tick when you want to ensure that everything is above board and, as you said, nothing is hanky-panky. What are those steps, in your opinion? For example, you would look at the registration number of a SEBI-registered provider of services. That would just be one of them, right?
I think the most important thing is what is the medium of communication. So, I mean, I agree that this was an egregious example where you had a mainstream media ad. But typically, I think the first red flag is where is this person who's contact you coming from, really, right? So, and then you check on the antecedents. If it's a Dubai number or some foreign number, that's the first red flag. If something is coming from WhatsApp, again, normal brokers don't contact you through WhatsApp. So I think any of these things, the mode of communication is typically the first very, very obvious red flag. Second is to check, like I said, are these registered people? Do RBI or SEBI regulate them, etc. And finally, I think just if anything is too good to be true, it probably is, which means this is probably fraudulent. So anybody selling you guaranteed, schemes which return money. And again, most of these trades are not for buying Infosys. They usually contracts of differences. So they'll say, you buy Infosys today and sell it tomorrow, and I'll give you the price difference between the two. So I think these are kind of the three major red flags I would look for.
I believe we've got a caller, Sunil Ashok, who's calling us from Mumbai, who's got a question to ask. Sunil, thanks for calling us. How can we help you today?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I have been fraud. There has been a fraud with me from SEBI registered brokers and non-SEBI registered advisories and bank.
Okay.
So where exactly should I complain? I need a number. Easily, I can be mean to say it should be contactable and everything, easy to report a crime and everything. So where should I go for that?
Sunil, can I ask you the nature of this fraud and what is the amount of money that you have lost? How have you lost it?
Some 60 lakh rupees I've lost. There was a news going on like a big bank has frauded NRIs by switching their money from savings account to mutual fund. That's exactly what happened.
That was 81 bonds, sir. Are you saying that there is a bank that has asked you to convert your money from a fixed deposit to an 81 bond?
No, in their mutual funds. In their mutual fund. Here, like I'm an NRI, I was an NRI, so I was getting some interest of 70,000 rupees. I am not well. So they made me persuade, mis-selling, misleading to switch to mutual fund, which made a loss. From past 5 years, there is no income. They are withdrawing my money and giving it to me. There's one fraud. And to mean to say gain profits, I went to advisory, which frauded against me again from a SEBI registered and a non-SEBI registered as well. They run saying us a SEBI registered firm.
Okay. Let me go. I do not know the absolute details of what you are telling me, and so therefore I must caution you to say that with the absence of all of the clear details, we may not be able to give you the most pertinent advice. But with that caveat, let me ask Sandeep if he has any advice for you. Sandeep?
So I think with respect to the second query, I think it's obvious that if he has dealt with unregistered entities, SEBI would not help. Except if they've led him to believe they're registered and they're not registered, he can certainly complain to SEBI. With respect to the first deal, it seems like a deal gone bad. Really, I think he invested, broke his FD, and kind of invested in mutual funds which have not done well. That doesn't sound like fraud to me. So again, it'll depend on what the facts are. Was he missold or was he not missold? But based on what he said, it seems like the returns have been suboptimal, and therefore there doesn't appear to be any fraud really.
You know, I think the distinction needs to be made, as hard as it is, Sunil, to say. The distinction needs to be made between bad advice and fraud or scam. A scam is something that takes place in the illegal sphere, and I'm not suggesting that this is something that has happened with you. What I'm trying to say is that in the case of the 81 bonds, retail investors had no business investing in 81 bonds. So there was a clear infraction that took place over there. They were led to believe that they would be investing in fixed deposits or some other similar instrument, and they were asked to invest in 81 bonds. But having said that, if he does want to raise this, Sandeep, who does he go to? Does he reach out to SEBI in some form?
No, so the first mutual fund example he gave, if there's mis-selling, certainly can go to SEBI. Otherwise, it just seems like there doesn't seem to be any case of fraud. With respect to the second one, unregistered people posing as registered people, certainly you can complain to SEBI. With respect to registered entities giving poor advice, again, I think he can contact SEBI. But again, it'll have to be shown very clearly that it's a registered person has given wrong advice, not just advice which went southwards.
Okay, and hopefully that is helpful, Sunil. I apologize if we can't give you better advice because we don't have all of the details of the case that you've shared with us. But I want to go to you, Shriram, on a couple of things, and this is more or less drawing the conversation to a close. We've established how a lot of times greed is involved in gravitating towards lucrative opportunities, or at least opportunities that might appear lucrative on the face of it. How much, according to you, is the importance of benchmarking your expectations and anchoring them to reality, because ultimately this is the most important thing. And if you match your equity expectations or returns from equity expectations to what your country is doing, I guess that would solve half the problems. Would you agree?
Yes, but usually what happens is the people who engage in these trades or the investors are usually, there is a familiarity factor. Usually they are following someone else who they trust, be it their friend, relatives, or somebody who has made money out of these illegal trades. So there is a familiarity factor, and they get sort of swooned by these unrealistic returns that their friends have made. So from that perspective, the remit of market operators or even SEBI for that matter is to do more investor education. And as you said, greed, which is having unrealistic return expectations, or not even taking into consideration the risks of default, the risk of not getting the money back, etc., is what makes these investors, I would think, fall into these traps.
Yeah, absolutely, you said it. Shriram, Sandeep, thanks so much for joining me today. Absolute pleasure speaking with you. Very important subject that we've just spoken about. Do remember, as we close out this conversation, viewer, that this is only one instance of a scam that we've pointed out. And as a channel, as an organization, we will continue to strive to educate you, the investor, and protect you from what could be instances of fraud, instances of scam. But the most important thing for you to do as an investor is to remain alert and to ask the right questions before you sign that check, before you send the money, and especially ask questions that relate to whether an individual that is giving you advice is registered, is affiliated with a registered entity, and is giving you sound advice. That brings us to the end of this edition of Spot the Scam. It's been a pleasure bringing it to you. Do stay tuned. This is NDTV Profit.